How does MI5 legally spy on someone in the United Kingdom? Who gives permission? Who watches the watchers? And what exactly happens inside the secret courts that authorise some of the most intrusive surveillance powers in British history? Because contrary to popular belief, MI5 cannot simply decide to monitor you. It cannot place you under surveillance on a whim. It cannot intercept your communications without formal legal authority. Everything it does, at least in law, is governed by one of the most detailed intelligence oversight systems in the democratic world. Tonight, we are going deep inside that system. We will walk step by step through how a target is identified, how a warrant is drafted, who approves it, what the Investigatory Powers Act actually allows, how Judicial Commissioners review decisions, what the Investigatory Powers Tribunal does behind closed doors, and where the real controversies lie. This is how MI5 legally conducts surveillance in the UK, and it is far more structured than most people realise. Pause. First, we need to understand what MI5 actually is. MI5 is the security service. It is not the police. It does not arrest people. It does not prosecute cases. It gathers intelligence to protect the UK against threats to national security. Those threats include terrorism, espionage, sabotage, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, serious hostile state activity, and increasingly, cyber operations. MI5 operates under the Security Service Act 1989. That act defines its core functions. But surveillance powers today primarily come from a different piece of legislation. The Investigatory Powers Act 2016, often referred to as the IPA, sometimes called the Snooper's Charter by critics. The IPA is the backbone of modern UK surveillance law. It sets out exactly what intelligence agencies can intercept, acquire, retain, and examine. It also defines how warrants must be authorised. Now here is the first key point. MI5 cannot issue its own interception warrants. It must apply for them. And those applications go through a system known as the double lock. The double lock is one of the central safeguards introduced in 2016. Here is how it works. Step 1. An operational team within MI5 identifies a potential target. This may be someone suspected of involvement in terrorism, or a foreign intelligence officer operating under diplomatic cover, or a person communicating with a hostile state. Before surveillance begins, MI5 must demonstrate 3 legal principles: necessity, proportionality, and legality. Necessity means the surveillance is required for national security, serious crime prevention, or similar statutory purposes. Proportionality means the intrusion must not exceed what is needed to achieve that aim. Legality means it must fit within powers defined by Parliament. These are not abstract ideas. They must be written into the warrant application in detail. The application explains who the target is, what activity justifies surveillance, what specific techniques will be used, how long the warrant is requested for, what collateral intrusion might occur, and how data will be handled. Collateral intrusion is important. If you monitor one person, you may also capture communications from innocent third parties, family members, colleagues, lawyers. The application must explain how that risk is mitigated. Now the application moves upward. It is submitted to the Secretary of State, usually the Home Secretary for Domestic Security Matters. This is the first lock. The Home Secretary must personally approve the warrant, not a civil servant, not MI5 itself, an elected Minister of the Crown. They must consider whether the legal tests are satisfied. If the Home Secretary refuses, the warrant does not proceed. But approval from the Secretary of State is not enough. That is where the second lock comes in. After ministerial approval, the warrant is sent to a Judicial Commissioner. Judicial Commissioners are senior judges, often retired High Court or Court of Appeal judges. They operate under the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office, known as IPCO. The Judicial Commissioner conducts an independent review. They examine the same tests: necessity, proportionality, legality. They can approve or refuse. If they refuse, the warrant cannot be issued. That is the double lock. Executive approval plus judicial oversight. Only once both approved does the warrant become active. Now what can that warrant authorise? There are several categories. Interception warrants allow MI5 to intercept communications in transit. That could mean phone calls, emails, messaging traffic. Bulk interception warrants allow interception of large volumes of data from communication bearers, such as fiber optic cables, although filtering mechanisms are required. Equipment interference warrants allow hacking. Yes, hacking. MI5 can legally interfere with devices. That includes remotely accessing computers, extracting stored files, activating microphones or cameras, subject to strict authorization. Bulk equipment interference allows large-scale device interference for intelligence purposes. There are also communications data warrants. This is metadata, who contacted whom, when, where. Not content, but extremely revealing patterns. Under the IPA, communications service providers can be required to retain certain metadata for up to 12 months. MI5 can request access to that data with appropriate authorization. Now let us address a common myth. MI5 cannot simply monitor everyone's conversations in real time. Bulk powers exist? Yes. But even bulk data must be filtered and searched using specific selection criteria, and those searches must themselves meet necessity and proportionality standards. Oversight does not stop at authorization. IPCO conducts regular audits. It inspects agencies, reviews errors, publishes annual reports. If MI5 makes a compliance error, even a minor one, it must be reported. Some errors are technical, others are more serious. If serious enough, affected individuals may eventually be notified. Now let us talk about the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. The IPT is one of the most unusual courts in the UK. It hears complaints about surveillance by intelligence agencies. If you believe MI5 has unlawfully surveilled you, you can bring a case. Proceedings are often partly secret. Evidence involving national security may be heard in closed session. Special advocates, security-cleared lawyers, may represent the interests of complainants in those closed sessions. The tribunal has the power to declare surveillance unlawful, order destruction of data, award compensation. It is rare. But it happens. Now here is where controversy enters. Critics argue that bulk surveillance powers remain too broad. That metadata can be as intrusive as content. That closed hearings limit transparency. Supporters argue the UK's double lock system is stronger than many democracies. That judicial oversight is robust, that reporting requirements are strict. The reality lies somewhere between security necessity and civil liberty concern. Consider encryption. MI5 has argued that end-to-end encryption limits its ability to detect threats. The IPA contains technical capability notices. These can require companies to maintain capabilities to assist with lawful interception. But companies cannot be forced to break encryption in a way that undermines systemic security, at least under current legal interpretation. This debate is ongoing, and it is intensifying. Now let us talk about time limits. Interception warrants typically last 6 months. Equipment interference warrants may last 6 months. Urgent warrants can be issued without prior judicial approval, but must be reviewed within days. Emergency powers exist, but they are tightly time-bound. If judicial approval is not granted, the warrant ceases to have effect. Data retention and destruction policies are also regulated. Agencies cannot keep data indefinitely. Retention must be justified. Material irrelevant to investigations should be destroyed. Although critics argue in practice this can be complex, there is also parliamentary oversight. The Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament, the ISC, reviews agency policy and expenditure. It receives classified briefings. It produces public reports, albeit sometimes redacted. This is yet another layer. So when people ask, can MI5 legally spy on someone? The answer is yes, but only through a structured, multi-layered authorization regime. Ministerial approval, judicial approval, operational safeguards, independent oversight, tribunal accountability, parliamentary scrutiny, and statutory boundaries defined by Parliament. Now, does this system eliminate abuse? No system does. But the UK framework is deliberately designed to create friction, to slow down decisions, to force written justification, to create audit trails, to ensure that surveillance is not simply operational instinct, but legally defensible action. Because in a democracy, intelligence power must be constrained by law. Without constraint, security becomes control. Without oversight, secrecy becomes impunity. The UK model attempts to balance both. National security on one side, individual rights on the other. It is a balance constantly debated, constantly adjusted, constantly tested by technology, artificial intelligence, mass data flows, encrypted platforms, hostile state cyber operations. As threats evolve, so too does the legal architecture, and Parliament continues to amend the Investigatory Powers Act to respond. So the next time someone says, MI5 can just spy on anyone, you now understand the legal pathway required, the paperwork, the approvals, the judges, the audits, the secret court, the parliamentary committee, the tribunal. Surveillance in the UK is powerful, but it is not lawless, and understanding that distinction matters, because in a constitutional democracy, power is not defined by what agencies can do. It is defined by what they are permitted to do, under law, under oversight, under scrutiny. That is how MI5 legally conducts surveillance in the United Kingdom. Warrants, oversight, and secret courts. Explained. If you found this breakdown valuable, stay with us. Because next, we examine what would trigger the UK's highest national threat level and who really makes that call. Until then, this is UK Tech. Explained. UK, Britain. Where power structures are unpacked carefully, precisely, and without the myths.